In the soundbar market, Dolby Atmos used to be only reserved for flagship products, but now we're seeing it come across on even budget alternatives such as the Majority Elias. Indeed, at the time of filming and in the UK, it can be found for just £100. And for that, you're getting a 2.0.2 channel configuration, and yes, with 2 physical upward firing drivers, 160 watts of power output, and a multitude of different inputs such as Bluetooth. Now, in this review, you can see if it's actually worth its price tag and if its specs actually live up to the billing. So to kick things off, I thought I should quickly talk about its overall design, and here it's available in a black finish and has got a metal grille that stretches around it. I've got no real complaints. In fact, it's actually pretty slender and therefore doesn't obscure any of your lower portion of your TV viewing experience, and is pretty compact. Here the dimensions of the soundbar itself will be on your screen so you can weigh it up for yourself. In my case, I've got it on a cabinet in front of a Samsung QE65QN95B, and indeed the TV completely dwarfs the pretty small soundbar. You can also wall mount the soundbar if you so wish, therefore giving you good sort of versatility. Now, for you to interact with the soundbar, there are a few physical buttons placed on top of it, which are very much appreciated. But better still, you've also got a wireless remote, which allows you to adjust certain settings from afar. And when you do so, you'll be able to notice that there's an LCD display which gives you indication of what you're actually adjusting, and also shows across the metadata that's actually being used on the soundbar, such as, let's say, when Dolby Atmos is being utilized, or for example, just a regular PCM input. Now, while that's all very well and good, there are 2 issues that I face while using the soundbar. First off, and something that might be a little bit trivial, is the fact that the Majority logo that's plastered at the front of the soundbar is slightly off, and therefore does throw off my OCD a little bit. I appreciate this might be isolated to my product only and might not affect every single consumer unit out there, but nonetheless it's something I thought I should share. Now, what is a little bit more concerning is the fact there is a static sound that can be heard every single time you power on the soundbar. It occurs for roughly 5 to 10 seconds and just goes away. You'll not hear it again in terms of future listening. But then each time you power off the soundbar and let it go cold for a little while and switch it on again, that sort of static sound comes back. I'm not really sure why, but again, I just thought to report it in my review, and just something that you should be aware of before purchasing the Elias soundbar. Now, with that in mind, what I do really love is the connectivity options. First off, you've got auxiliary input, which can be useful for more legacy devices. You've got USB playback, which is actually quite a novelty, specifically at this price point, and therefore will support the likes of MP3 playback. You've also got optical, which can be connected up to a television, and you've also got an HDMI eARC/ARC output, and therefore means that that will be the preferred usage. So see, given over here, you've got the eARC port, which gives you uncompressed Dolby Atmos data directly to your television, of course, if it does support it. In my case, my relatively modern Samsung television does support that and has got the eARC port, and therefore means I can get the most out of the soundbar, specifically when it comes to that heightened metadata. Now elsewhere, you have also got Bluetooth, where the lowest quality SBC codec is supported only. So therefore you might want to use it sparingly, but it's quite handy to use it as a Bluetooth speaker as such, because if you have got friends or family who come over, they can just play back their favourite tunes. Now, with all that in mind, let's get on to an audio demo. I appreciate it's not going to be ideal over YouTube nor using my microphones, but I'll give you a little bit of a taster. First off, I'll be playing back Priya-Jay's track, which is titled Like Me, and then I'll be going on to a piece to camera where I'll be presenting the Hyundai Kona Electric on Totally EV. Make sure you check out the annotations on your screen to understand how the soundbar is actually operating. Yes, indeed, when I originally reviewed the Hyundai Kona, there were not that many alternatives, but now you are littered with them. So in this review, you can think if this actually stands out over some of its key competitors. Now, at the time of filming and in the UK, prices start from £35,000 and extend up to £43,000 for the ultimate trim, which we have on review, and this is of course without adding any additional options. So to kick things off, I thought I should talk about its electric range, because arguably this is one of the key selling points of the older generation model. Now, at the time of filming and in the UK, the entry-level advanced trim is available with 2 different battery packs. So I'm not really sure how much you're able to attain from the audio demos, but nonetheless I'll be getting onto my subjective opinion very shortly. Now first off, I should point out you've got 4 different EQs to choose from. The one I actually sided towards was the music preset because it just brought everything to fruition. If however you want some extra sort of clarity in the vocal sounds, and indeed you're going to be only listening to, for example, news, podcasts, or of course a piece to camera, like when I was presenting the Hyundai Kona on Totally EV, you might want to go for the news EQ. Now, as for the movies EQ, I would only suggest this if you're listening to regular PCM or let's say Dolby Digital movies. If you're going to be using Dolby Atmos and therefore having that heightened metadata, then I would suggest using the 3D preset. I'll be touching upon this further down in this video, so make sure you stay tuned. Now, in terms of the overall sound presentation of the soundbar, it's relatively good. It's not exactly the best out there on the market, and equally, it's not going to really upgrade your overall TV speakers if you've got a more flagship or expensive television, but if you have got a budget TV, or for example, let's say a small little dingy TV, then this will seriously upgrade your overall TV listening experience. Now let me break it down for you. Now first off, you have got the overall sub-bass tones, and that is that sort of low-end rumble that you'll hear in sort of music or movies. And unfortunately over here, it's pretty much non-existent. As a reminder, it's got a 2.0.2 channel configuration, and yes indeed it emits a subwoofer altogether. Now if you do look out there on the market, you'll find some alternatives, for example from the likes of Creative, that do actually offer a subwoofer as well. And while it's not exactly going to compete with more expensive alternatives, that soundbar system does provide a much better low-end experience in comparison to the Majority Elias. So just worth considering that if you do want that low-end rumble and you do listen to a lot of music or movies, then you might want to consider that instead. However, what I will say is the overall mid-bass was actually done to perfection. I had no real complaints, again, at its overall price point in terms of the overall control and also the overall impact. In fact, over here, via the remote control, you can add a few notches to the bass EQ to bring it out to the foreground a bit more, therefore giving you a bit more of excitement and sort of warmth to the soundbar. As for the overall vocal clarity, it is a little bit pushed back, but in terms of this price point, I do think it's among one of the best out there. Again, it's not going to compete with more expensive soundbars, but for its price point, I do think it does do a tremendous job. In this respect, while listening to, let's say, male or female vocals, or indeed a piece to camera, I didn't really feel that the mids were overly drowned out. Here you can actually EQ the treble by a little few notches, but do that sparingly, because that will also adjust the highs, which I'm going to be touching upon now. The highs over here do extend relatively well in terms of its default configuration and can be at times a little bit ear fatiguing, and that's because you've got a bit of sibilance and harshness. As such, I actually found myself using the treble EQ at -1 or indeed at its 0 EQ, just depending on the scenario I was going on. So what I'm trying to say over here is that while the treble EQ is relatively handy if you do want to boost the mid-range a little bit, it does also affect the highs, and therefore means that you might just want to use it at a slight leisure, depending on sort of the music that you're listening to, or for example the content, or of course your own hearing range. So while it has its competencies across the sound frequency range, I do think it's let down by its overall soundstage reproduction. Now make no mistake, this is a budget soundbar which is pretty compact, and therefore it's not going to compete with larger soundbars out there on the market, nor ones which come in at a more of an expensive price tag. For example, its sibling, the Majority Sierra Plus 2.1.2, blew everything out of the water, and specifically when it comes to the overall soundstage, was far better suited in comparison to the Elias. Now this is potentially because I had high expectations from Majority, but also because I saw the Dolby Atmos certification on it. In other words, it's got that logo and therefore means that you should be able to get a sort of Atmos experience, and one that will really feel pretty engaging. But alas, even with those upward firing audio drivers, it still doesn't give me that sort of cinematic experience that one might expect. Instrument separation is a little bit lackluster, and the overall width and depth just feels a little bit closed. Now for me to actually give you a movie demo and also talk about Atmos, I'll be playing back Transformers Age of Extinctions. Make sure you check out the annotations on your screen because I'll be flicking between Dolby Digital / Dolby Surround and also Dolby Atmos.
They're going to kill you!
So yet again, an audio demo over YouTube is not quite ideal because it's not going to give you a lifelike reproduction, but nonetheless I thought I should provide it as it gives you a bit of a taster as to what to expect. Now hopefully you're able to pick it out, but yes, Dolby Atmos does have a positive effect in terms of the overall listening experience, specifically while using the 3D preset. Now do bear in mind that what I did mention before, that if you're not going to be using Dolby Atmos, you might want to go for the movie preset instead. You might be wondering, why didn't I do that on the movie demo? And that's just purely because I was just comparing with Dolby Atmos and Dolby Digital and wanted you to know the differences between the two, rather than what the presets were actually doing to the soundbar. So hopefully that makes sense and you can understand my logic. Now, what I will still say, however, is that the overall Soundstage reproduction is still pretty closed, and while you're still utilizing those upward firing drivers with Dolby Atmos, it's not going to give you that sort of cinematic experience. Now this kind of leads me on to my verdict and potentially one of my complaints over here. And here this is the fact that this is marketed as a Dolby Atmos soundbar. And yes, indeed it is. It does support Dolby Atmos's metadata, and indeed over here will feed it through without any sort of issues. However, Dolby Atmos has really become a marketing gimmick over the years. Audiophiles might remember that back in the days it used to be dedicated for hi-fi systems with upward firing drivers that were planted into the ceiling, and you had rear-facing drivers as well. Over the years that's kind of been diluted to the point that now you have budget soundbars like the Elias that only have upward firing audio drivers that still give you a kind of unidirectional closed sound, and despite that fact are being marketed as something that's going to give you that sort of cinematic feel with Dolby Atmos. Now what I'm trying to say over here is that if you're buying this soundbar because of Dolby Atmos, you're buying it for the wrong reasons. If that's something you're really looking out for, just spend some more money and get, for example, its more expensive sibling, the Majority Sierra Plus 2.1.2, which does a phenomenal job across the board and does actually give a far better Dolby Atmos experience despite its pretty budget price tag. If you do want to look past that, you've got some other soundbars, of course. Now, if you are looking for a compact soundbar that does do a decent job across the sound frequency range, then the Elias is something that you might want to consider. While saying that, there are some other soundbars out there on the market that do a little bit of a better job. That's because they don't concentrate on the likes of having a marketing gimmick of Dolby Atmos, but rather having a better sound frequency range. And in this respect, the likes of the Creative Stage 2.1 actually do a better job because it actually has got a dedicated subwoofer and therefore gives you a bit of that extra bit of rumble. Again, it won't have all the features that the Majority has, but that's the soundbar I would pick at this price point. Now I'd be curious to know what you make of the Majority Elias down in the comment section below, and of course what you make of Dolby Atmos and what it has become over the years. Make sure you pop it down in the comment section below, and of course if you want some alternatives of the Elias soundbar, make sure you check out the description box because it'll give you also of the alternatives that I have actually tested. Now if you have enjoyed this detailed independent review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated and allows me to continue delivering honest reviews like this one. As such, I've been Totally Dubbed and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.